just gonna put my foot on the floor and I'm not lifting till I see God or a checkered flag.
Hello, and welcome back to episode 10 of Racing Thoughts and IndyCar Podcast. I'm Megan Dennis,
And I'm Megan Taylor.
and we are back to talk about Gateway and I guess preview Portland.
We're a little bit unprepared. Like we talked about last episode, our lives are kind of every which way right now. Really ramped up this week too. At least on, I know, Megan's front. So that's going to be a blast. But it just means we're a little discombobulated today.
New job and no permanent home yet. We're surviving.
We're surviving. We're thriving. Let's talk about cars.
I guess kicking off with the news that kind of broke before Gateway last week, I think it was on Wednesday. David Malukas, little Dave, our IndyCar little brother, is going to AJ Foyt next year. Meg, thoughts, comments, concerns?
I did not see that coming whatsoever. I think we talked about it in our last episode with, where he was going to be with Meyer Shank and everything. And Mike Shank was pretty with what he said. He was like, yeah, we want him. It just depends on what he wants to do, like basically putting all the responsibility on Dave. And I truly thought it was going to come down to like Rossi and like what Rossi was going to be doing with Meyer Shank. And even though there was literally like zero inklings of that connection at that point, like had no idea. Regardless, it's going to be an interesting move. I think regardless of who his teammate ends up being. Because Dave, as we all know, is a very interesting character. I mean, he's a phenomenal racer, but just that aside, he's a really interesting person. And so having him lined up with either Stingray or Ferrucci is going to be the weirdest combination, regardless of which way you put it. Like, I'm honestly a little excited to see it just because of how weird it's going to get. I mean, he's going to do a great job there, regardless. He's going to put that car pretty high up just because he is such a good racer, but it's just hilarious to think about whoever his teammate is. Either one is just going to be and put it up on YouTube because it would be hilarious to watch the interactions. I think it's going to be a good opportunity for Dave. Just going to leave it at that, I guess.
No, I'll echo that. And definitely it was shocking on like you said, like I mean I was literally in the middle of editing last week's episode where we were talking about like, oh yeah, where's David gonna end up? And then the news broke and I was like, we're a little out of date by the time this will be published, but too late
Okay.
now, we're gonna roll with it.
In our defense, we said that in the episode. We knew
Sure
this. Everything we said, we were like, this is true as of this date. So you can't come for us for not being self-aware.
And I think the Penske connection is really probably behind the scenes, or I guess maybe a little to the front of the scenes, an influencing factor because like, is this meaning that that's kind of that partnership setting up? So if and when Will Power does retire in the next 2-3 years, does that open up a chance for David Malukas to move there? Maybe. I don't know. I am very intrigued to see who ends up beside him, whether it's Stingray, and that means that David's getting that paid driver seat, or whether Santino's staying and he's getting paid to race and David's bringing his backing that we know, like, no, he hasn't raced this year on it, but we know that he does have, because we know AJ Foyt at the end of the day does need that money, either Malukas Camp or from Stingray Raw.
Yeah, they need to get that money from somewhere. And it's going to be interesting to see how the chips fall with the rest of that. So we're going to keep an eye out, I guess. And then the other big news with Canapino being out, we have Connor Daly being confirmed for the rest of the year, which we knew was going to happen. It was like, yes, okay, thank you for confirming what literally everybody and their mother already knew. But oh my God, what a shocker, Connor Daly.
Yeah, I mean, that's one where it's like, we knew Canapino was out last week, and that's what you're saying. It's like, well, it's probably going to be CD. And then it's like, oh, it's him. And then it's him for the rest of the year. He saying it's in something last week of just like, well, one, he is so excited to actually get to be back in IndyCar again, which, good for Connor Daly. I'm happy for him for that. But also how like it originally was just supposed to be Gateway. And then like, I guess his times were good enough that it really was just one where it's like JHR was like, no, we'll put you in for the rest of the year. Because they are right on that bubble or the winner's circle, and getting that extra money, which we know as a team that they need. So you bring in someone who is known to be really good on ovals. I mean, I think it might be win-win for everyone around.
Yeah, no, it's unsurprising. I'm excited for what Connor's going to be able to produce for the rest of the season. So that's really that. Did I miss anything else this week? I don't think so.
I don't think, well, there is other stuff, but it's kind of like post-race related, other than if you haven't seen on Twitter, because it's hilarious, and I think everyone needs to go look. Scott McLaughlin has started watching Jersey Shore for the first time. He's live tweeting all his thoughts. It is the most hilarious thing, and I've never been like, oh yeah, no, we are definitely like the same age and like grew up in like high school at the same time, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Of just like, it's just when we were experiencing this at 15, 16, he's
Mhm.
now experiencing it at 31.
And it's the funniest thing. Just big snooky guy. My favorite is him figuring out what a Guido, Guidette, and a juice head is, because it is so quintessential Jersey and absolutely hilarious.
Like I said, there is other stuff to talk about, but I think we need to talk about the race first to be
Okay.
able to get into that stuff.
All right, so let's dive right in, I guess. Starting from practice one, Linus had the hybrid failure in practice one, which again, unsurprising that that continues to happen every so often. And then I guess the big thing too was that little Dave got P1 in practice. And I think that just kind of showed the pace that he has. And I'm really glad that it's being like kind of really seen and being put far forward because he does have that capability. And that did continue basically throughout the rest of the weekend. Like he was quick. He was very fast. We're going to talk about what ends up happening towards the end, but that's practice one. And then you want to talk about quali? Because I did not get the chance to watch quali.
Yeah, so just want to start with I do not like oval qualifying. I really don't. I get why safety wise we can't like put, all 27 cars on a track, but like this isn't important. It's just I just gotta say it. I just don't like it.
And you made fun of me for so long because of it.
I really didn't think they were all like this. This is what, only my third oval?
I hate oval qualies.
It's just boring.
Yeah.
But to get into this one, Jack Harvey had issues again. But this time, like for a second, everyone's like, "Oh, here we go again. He's gonna run 4 more times." But now Jack Harvey just had his own set of issues and couldn't set a time. And then his teammate followed that up with Catherine Legg didn't pass technical inspection, so she wasn't able to set a time. So the first 2 people out of the gate weren't able to set, both in Dale Klein. Sucks for them, starting in the back. Other than that, not a ton interesting happened, other than we had a yellow flag for a water bottle on track, which felt kind of unnecessary to me, but I'm not race control. Just let the car go real fast. It'll probably move.
Or it could cause some damage. Downforce, dude.
50-50 chance. Just go faster. And then Colton ended up hitting the wall, which we'll talk about his race, or I want to talk about his race because I was very impressed. But yeah, just fully lost it, spun around, went straight to the wall. Not great. And then Scotty Mack got pole again.
Oh, that's really upsetting. I didn't know Colton had hit the wall. Again, I didn't get to watch quali or the race until later, so I was watching everything on delay.
Yeah, no, Colton ended up qualifying 25th because of that. So like he was able to set a time. So like despite putting it in the wall, he was able to keep the car going enough to finish the lap. So that's why he was ahead of the 2 Del Coins. But yeah, he did a number on the rear of that car.
That's rough.
Like full gearbox replacement, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I guess shout out to Colton's team then for putting that back together.
Definitely. But yeah, that's quality. Second practice, I don't think I made any notes of, but Pato was P1 in that, so he definitely had the pace there, and we'll get into that one as well. But I don't know. It was an interesting Friday, interesting run times too, because especially the second practice on Friday was like 8:30 at night, so it was fully under the lights.
Listen, there's something magical about race cars under the lights. We see it in F1. We've seen it in IndyCar. I want to see more of it because I think they look fantastic. The cars themselves, the guys, like just the whole ambiance, it's just very special. And I love it. So that brings us to our race. Interesting one, huh?
It was, for me personally, the best race of the year.
Please elaborate.
Because racing wise, quite genuinely, I enjoyed this race. I think
Mhm.
because we did have two lanes of running in
Yeah.
the sense of like that we haven't seen really previously, and that like we were having a lot of passing, we were having a lot of overtaking. It was at all ends of the field, like you were seeing just good racing happening.
Mhm.
However, if you know you're one of my favorites, well, you didn't really have a good outcome happening.
No, it was a tough day for the Racing Thoughts community.
Yeah.
We struggled. We struggled this week. We had Pato with the mechanical failure, so engine issues, and it's such a shame because he was having a really good race and he had the pace as we saw in the second practice when he got P1, like he had it and then it just died out on him. And it's heartbreaking when something like that happens. And like granted, it's heartbreaking when that something like that happens to anybody because it's just like so anticlimactic of just like mechanical failure. Really, that's what's taking me out of this race. And then it's just that much worse because it's Pato, like I feel bad. It's been so inconsistent with his car because when it's good, it's freaking good and he puts it where it needs to be. But then sometimes I just feel like he's outperforming this car and they're not giving him something that's a consistent setup, whether that's a quali setup or race run setup or something. Kind of makes me think of like Colton with how the yellow flags haven't been working in his favor. And, the things that have been taking him out of these races are not his fault. And it's the same thing that's happening with Pato. So it's just very frustrating when my own personal favorite is getting taken out of championship contention because of some stupid bullshit with this car. So that's my rant on that.
All right, we want to get into the nitty gritty messiness that was the two parts of it of this race.
Sure.
Okay, so Willpower runs David Malukas fully and completely off the road. And then they're in pit lane. Freaking Will starts screaming at David. And like, did you see his like post-race interview?
I've heard people talking about it, but I didn't see it. And from what I have heard, willpower, you better count your days. Because I am coming. I will hide in your walls. That's a
Like,
lie. I will not do that. But
I mean, it's one where, I'm not saying like, oh, poor little David Malukas, blah, blah, blah. Like, I mean, I love David. Don't get me wrong by any means on that one. But it's one where there wasn't anything you could do. He's running in the top three all race and just fully gets punted off and taken out. And Willpower at that point at least gets to continue on with his race. And it's like David's post race interview. I mean, you can tell he's trying not to cry. And like, I think what annoyed me a little bit was that, like people were taking it like, oh, he's upset because like Willpower yelled at him. And it's like, no, it was frustration because he was having one of the best races and had the chance to get his first race win
yeah.
ever in a year that's been very hard for him as a racer. And yeah, it's frustrating because this is, I think, the third race in a row we've seen Willpower pull these shenanigans where it's like I like Willpower. Not gonna deny I do like Willpower. But like it's like, dude, you've been doing this too long to be like this stupid with it as a
Yeah.
racer. Now you want to flip people off or, yell at people, go ahead. It happens. You're also having a bad day at work at that point
Yeah.
of your own creation, but it's a bad day at work. But like it's just you can't hit people and think you can get around them.
No.
Although the lack of penalty, and I want to touch on this because I got some notes I want to read out on that one. But like
Yeah.
the lack of penalty, I guess, kind of says like, well, you can.
Yeah, it's frustrating with I don't want to call it a racing incident because I don't think it should be as blasé as calling it a racing incident because it did seem like he was running David off the road and there was nothing that he could do about it. That is the reality of racing. We all know this, right? I think the part that I am frustrated and that makes me upset is that, like you touched on, Will has been doing this for so long. I expect a level of maturity out of him that I did not see. And that is kind of embarrassing for him. Like to yell at David like that with everybody around. And it's just like, really, dude? Like, I get it, emotions run high, but that seems a little much, especially from someone like Will. And I think part of what I've seen too is like I've seen people like making fun of David almost for crying and like acting like that, but you get screamed at by someone who's effectively your coworker. And like you mentioned, this was on track to be his first race win. Emotions get high. Like, I applaud David for kind of showcasing that a little bit and not letting that stop him from feeling those emotions. But it's just like, I don't know. People's reactions, especially online, are just really weird. They're all over the place. And this is what I have been seeing is just either like people attacking David for it, but then also people attacking Will for the same thing. It's just, I don't understand a lot of it. It's just people are really stupid. That's what it comes down to, in my opinion.
No, definitely. And when we talk about everything at the end in the last 10 laps, a court of public opinion has been very high and very one way or the other. And heaven forbid you disagree. And I guess, I mean, we're sitting here talking about it ourselves and we have our own bias and opinions on it. So I guess we aren't any better than the masses.
Okay,
We don't.
but in our defense, we can at least admit that we have our biases. And I do think, correct me if I'm wrong, to anybody who listens, I think we do a pretty okay job of understanding our biases and not always letting that cloud our own judgment on things. Like, I was talking to one of our mutuals on our Instagram when the hybrid episode had dropped, and she was making fun of me calling Pato a moron, even though he's my absolute favorite. I'm like, I am not so high and mighty that like I'm gonna call them out for being stupid, even though they're my favorite, but I'm calling them out because they're my favorite. And so I can fully admit if my favorites up. I can totally do that. And I can also admit when I can be like, yeah, you know what? I have a different lens on these things, but it's just getting absurd online. And I feel like this is the race that has just really escalated for whatever reason. Like, everybody online has opinions post race, but this was excessive this time. So,
No, I mean, it definitely feels kind of like a boil over from the end of like summer break too, where we were, or at least I was seeing a lot of like kind of very like testiness online where it's just like, okay, this is a lot. And I can't remember what did or didn't make the cut, to be honest. But I think we touched about it last week.
All right, well, moving on. Interesting
La-
last few laps of the race. Again, very polarizing opinions on what happened on the restart. I don't know how to feel about all of the drama that's surrounding Joseph. Anybody who knows me and listens to me talk for like 5 minutes knows that I am not Joseph's fan whatsoever. I like to call him out, but I like to call him out fairly. I don't fully know if he actually brake checked. And that's what a lot of people are arguing about online. I don't know if he did. Do I think he definitely went way too slow? For sure. I don't think he did the restart correctly, but I don't think he brake checked, and people are like up in arms about it. I think he went a little bit slower than what he should have been going, and that is what truly screwed things up. But also, like, you got what you got, willpower.
Just hate it had to take Alex Rossi with
I
like
he was doing so good.
I am fully biased camp land on this one where I don't know. I mean, you have Alex, Colton, Willpower, like all think that Scotty Mac wouldn't admit it outright, but he implied it that like they all think that if he wasn't at least brake checking, he was dragging the brake.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. I think he's getting around that on the technicality of like, no, I didn't brake check, but he definitely did something. And again, I think it's that technicality that he's writing out, and his camp is also writing out on that too.
and the problem with that is his camp is Penske and
Mhm.
Roger Penske, who's the series owner, and that I don't know, because IndyCar made the statement of like coming out of like, oh, there was no noticeable like drop in speed, but it's like I think this is what makes me mad, and I still haven't been able to actually find the clip of it, but like he essentially all but admits guilt at the end of the race in his like not his press conference interview, but his immediate like after race interview of
Yeah.
just, being like the way he was just being like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry about how that like restart happened. Where I'm like, if you're not guilty, don't be saying you're sorry then. Because like like, it's not a good look.
Well, I mean, we know he's not the best when it comes to talking about his own problems. I mean, his whole press conference when he got that penalty was so dumb. It was so stupid and such a bad PR move that I'm like, homie, whoever's on your PR team needs to get fired because that was atrocious. And then one of the other races that happened before summer break, I think it might have been Laguna Seca. Don't quote me on that, but where he was saying he had issues with some other software and he wrote that in his Instagram caption. I'm like, brother, you moron. So, like, we know he's not the smartest when it comes to that kind of stuff. So, he did also mention in that specific interview too, and I remember because I literally just watched it, he was saying like it might have come out like a split second like before I had gone on like the restart, or like there was some discrepancy in the timing, and like I'm sorry for how it turned out, but I wouldn't change a thing. It's like, I wonder why you wouldn't change a thing, dude. I just think he had probably also like a delayed reaction to the green too. And I think that's also probably what caught other people up was he was going slower than he normally should have. Again, on the technicality of not brake checking, but he was definitely going slower than he should have. And then a quote unquote delayed restart because whatever he chose to do with it, like he went after the green had shown a little bit later than he probably should have.
Well, and that seems to be really kind of where the drivers are kind of in two camps of whether, and the court of public opinion as well, but like whether it's because, Joseph's sitting here trying to say of like, well, as race leader, he dictates the start versus it's like Alex Rossi is saying it's like to the point. And I haven't looked into the rule book for this, but I'm trusting these men to know a little bit more about this than me. But it's like Rossi's sitting here saying, it's like, yes, it's the race leader to a point, and then it's at that point like anyone can go up to speed. And I think it was one where, yeah, Joseph was delaying as long as possible. It went green, and then everyone behind him was trying to get up to that speed. I mean, Scotty Mac hit him like not hard enough to take either of them out, but like Scotty hit him, which tells me right there that Joseph is going too slow.
Okay. So, according to our restart rules, it says the leader of the field under the yellow condition is required to maintain pace lap speed until reaching a designated point, the restart cone, where the leader is required to accelerate smoothly back to a racing speed and the green condition will be declared. The restart cone is usually located between the final turn and the start finish line on an oval. If the leader does not accelerate at the restart cone, the starter will show the green flag to the field to accelerate. The race director shall determine the type and timing of any penalty as deemed appropriate to the orderly conduct of the race. So I guess technically, I don't fucking know. That's what it comes down to. This is so tough. I would love to look at the telemetry of it all because it really seems like it is dictated by racing speed. And I think there were a couple people in several different camps being like, well, he wasn't going pace lap speed. He was going slower than that. Again, I don't have telemetry to look at that, so I don't know, but it looked like he was definitely going slower than pace lap.
Nathan Brown from the Indianapolis Star, who, I trust Nathan Brown when he's coming out with these things, said, for those questioning Joseph's restart, throttle / potential brake checking, IndyCar says data shows he maintained a constant 80 mile per hour and didn't ever slow. Listening more, I do agree that there's a brief sound change, but that's what the data says per the series. So, I guess, and I want to touch on a couple things, like some positives from the race, but I guess this really brings into statements that Brian Herta made post-race. It was a really interesting article that NBC put out, like immediately after, and the whole thing's really good. I'll try to remember to link it, but clipped this part where it said Herta, and again, talking about Brian Herta, strategist for Kyle Kirkwood, also Colton's dad, but Brian Herta confirmed that there remains a contingency in the IndyCar paddock that believes there are inequities in how the races are officiated. This despite the fact that earlier this year, IndyCar disqualified Newgarden from his victory in the season-opening Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, and also disqualified third-place finisher Scott McLaughlin and penalize Willpower for illegally manipulating the push-to-pass system in the race. It's a growing feeling in the paddock," Brian Herta continued. "Maybe I'm the first one to say that, but it's what people feel." So it's, and I guess to add to that, because I didn't read it in that quote. So Colton finished fourth. He got a penalty and then ended up, I think, finishing fifth because of it. He got a penalty for racing Linus very hard, arguably, I guess, too hard. I think it's kind of questionable at the end of that. But regardless of that one, Colton got a penalty after we had just had Willpower force David Malukas very blatantly off track, and no penalty was awarded to that. And then you have Joseph Newgarden, whatever, say he did brake check, and you can hear it, that there's something changes, whether what it is, I don't know, but you can hear it on his onboard. Nothing happens. It's not even really investigated. And it definitely seems like Brian's finally the one to publicly address that it's, maybe there is a problem when a team owner is also a series.
I agree. I think shout out for Brian Herta for being the one to finally say it. I think it does definitely create a lot of points of contention. I always felt like with the whole disqualification and like the whole St. Pete's drama of everything, it felt incredibly performative. Like, yeah, this is definitely what should have happened, but this feels like one of those things where Penske is going to be like riding that for God knows how long. They're like, well, no, we can't be corrupt. Look, we disqualified one of our own guys. So we disqualified and penalized our whole team. Like we're not blah blah blah, but like look at how it's continuing to play out. And like this isn't the first time where anybody from Penske has done something that's questionable that hasn't been penalized, but somebody from a different team does the same exact thing, gets penalized for it. So it's super inconsistent, and it feels like a point of contention. It's like very conflicting to have a team owner be a part of the governing body of the whole series, and their team is the one that is riddled with the most controversy on a consistent basis. It's really strange. Like I've seen also people compare that kind of stuff to like Ferrari's involvement within Formula One, where Ferrari being Ferrari has the power within the FIA to veto anything, really. But you never hear them do that because it's such a deep racing history for that team, in the same way that truly Penske should be for IndyCar. But it feels like Penske abuses it, whereas Ferrari is like very mindful of it and is like, nope, we're not touching that with a 10-foot pole, because they have an image to maintain, whereas Penske doesn't care about image, apparently. I don't know.
It's messy. And
I would love
I
to
mean,
hear other drivers and other teams. Like, I would love to hear their honest opinions on it. And again, like I said, shout out to Brian Herta for being the one to say it, but like, who else says it? I'm nosy. What are other people's opinion? You said you're not the only one, so who is it?
well, and I'm not going to be shocked if we at least vaguely hear like Hinch and Rossi talk about it on Off Track this week. And I want to get into some of the post-race like Twitter stuff with that too. But I guess before that, three kind of good things there at the end of the race. So congrats to Linus Lundqvist on his second podium of the year. He passed Colton at the end and was able to bring it around. And for someone who, assuming that, it is true that Chip Ganassi is going to be reducing cars and could be, Linus is one of those three drivers, and it's like, well, are you going to be one of the ones staying? Yeah, I think it's, a good show for him. If you're looking, I mean, quite honestly, if you're comparing like him and Marcus Armstrong, when you consider that it's like Linus has two podiums on the year. Marcus doesn't remotely really have the same to show. And if those are the two you're looking at, which one to keep, I think Linus is making a good show for himself for why he should stay. And he's also, I think, in the rookie, like best rookie of the year, whatever it's called. He's like 150 points over Kiffin right now.
I will say to that, I honestly think that, yeah, Linus has two podiums. Marcus only has one. Linus's best finish prior to his podiums is 12th. Marcus finishes much higher and his averages are much higher. And I mean, I mentioned this last week of like, what is CGR looking for in their final car spot that they're going to get if this charter goes through? And are you looking for something that is consistent midfield or like upper midfield, or are you looking for flashes of that brilliance that gets you a podium or two. I don't know. It's really depending on what Ganassi is looking for, but I just wanted to throw that out there because I love Marcus Armstrong and I'm going to defend that kid.
I'm not trying to slander Marcus Armstrong. I'm just
I know you're not. I'm just putting out facts and numbers because we know how much I love those things.
And with that, something I forgot to write down, and me sitting here talking about it made me think about it, and we won't spend a lot of time on it, but rumors of Pelot going to F1 have started to creep up a little bit more in the last week and a half and taking that last Audi seat. And I mean, Lord knows that would pull a massive wrench into things on multiple fronts. And like I said, I don't know if it's really something worth spending a lot of time on, but just interesting rumor, I think, on that one that I forgot to put up at the beginning.
Listen, everybody and their mother who is associated with F1 has been linked to that last Audi seat because I've heard rumors of Sebastian Vettel, I've heard rumors of Mick Schumacher, I've heard Pelot, I've heard everybody. Do I think it would be absolutely hilarious to watch Pelot get the Audi seat, especially after all the contract stuff with McLaren? Oh my God, I think that would be hilarious. Absolutely would shake up silly season in IndyCar. It would kind of be like Lewis going to Ferrari. That would be great.
I'm not saying it's good. He said it's not going to happen, that like none of these talks are true, but like at this point, I believe nothing when people say that.
Yeah.
It literally could just be rumor.
Rumors in motorsports are really interesting. They're either very true and no one believes them, or everyone believes them and none of it's true.
I mean, at this point, everybody and their brother is coming to IndyCar next year, and it's like, we don't have that space.
We do not. And I know we've posted about this on our Instagram too, of just like, I don't like how people view IndyCar as like the second tier. And like I know we've talked about this, but it is top tier racing series. It is kind of the elite within, America in this area. But I don't think you could throw a ton of F1 drivers into an IndyCar and they would succeed. Marcus Ericsson.
I was going to talk about him, so we could bring him up that way too.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying.
I mean, yeah, it's completely true on that one. And speaking of Andretti in general, rough. I mean, Colton, minus the penalty, got fifth. He got the biggest mover award, going from 25th to finishing on race fourth, which is so impressive. And he was the
Massive.
only Andretti car to finish, because that was another thing, another incident that we didn't talk about is, oh, darling Kyle got taken out by no fault of his own. And it freaking Connor Daly. I don't even think it was Connor's fault either. It was just Connor was the one who hit him. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Grosjean or if it was Rinus VeeKay that slowed down enough to cause Connor to spin into Kyle. It was a green car. So it was one of the two. I
It
don't
was
know.
somebody.
But like completely took out Kyle's gearbox. And it was one where the pits were closed when he came in. And so they like couldn't do anything other than change his flat tire. And they did that. And then like you hear him on the radio and he just goes, guys, like it's still a piece of shit. And so like he comes back in with the pits open and they're working on it forever. He gets out of the car. There's a picture of him like checking his phone, like just like chilling. And then gets back in the race 33 laps down, does a really good job, like super teammate Kyle Kirkwood. And I don't think that really gets talked about enough. I guess we didn't talk about Toronto and like the job he did there, but like he wasn't getting back into this race, but he did a really good job of like kind of holding people up enough for Colton to be able to continue to get ahead. And then when it got to the point of like the last yellow flag came out, 10 laps left, Kyle just drove back in the pits and called it a day.
Good on you.
Yeah, bad day for Mr. Consistency, but like at least he's one hell of a guy, Kyle Kirkwood.
Yeah, he's a hell of a teammate. And like even Colton has said this is just like he is one of probably the best teammates that Colton could have. And I don't know if this is definitely my bias speaking because I like Kyle more than I like Colton. Not saying I dislike Colton whatsoever. I do like him, but I just like Kyle more. Where I'm like, I constantly feel like Kyle is being put in that like second driver position where he's sacrificing a lot of his own races. I just would love to see him get his own priority sometimes.
I agree with you, but I also will say I think a lot of that is Kyle's choice. Again, I'm going off track, but going like back to Toronto of like he was told he could race Colton.
Yeah.
And he chose not to. And I mean, that's sitting there with like Colton's dad's his strategist. And like Brian's like, no, go get him.
Yeah, but that's gotta be such an uncomfortable position for Kyle to be in, and I just want him to do so well.
I mean, yeah, we all know I love Pink Car.
We do love the pink car in this house. No, but Kyle is such a good teammate, and I do love that Colton recognizes that. I think that's truly just the culmination of it. I just wish we got to see some of that love being reciprocated on the racetrack too, And yeah, that's really all that statement
Yeah.
came down to.
Yeah. I don't know how we got off track to Kyle Kirkwood, but like that's okay. Sin had a bad
Racing
race.
thought everywhere.
Racing thoughts, always. And then Marcus Ericsson, I honestly don't even remember how he ended up out of the race. I feel like it was his own fault. I could be making that up. I don't remember. I laughed. Sorry, Marcus.
Sorry, Marcus. But this is also coming off of what we were talking about in the last episode of like, dude, you gotta get better. Like, yeah, sure, Kyle was out of this race, but he was still, like you mentioned, doing a lot. And he has been consistent this entire season. Like, the only thing that I think Marcus is consistent in is crashing out through his own volition. So I'm just like, dude, your seat is sure confirmed, but like, is it? You keep doing this? I don't know.
Unless he has something real airtight, if I'm Michael Andretti and I know I got Alex Rossi, who I've had this long-standing connection with, I don't know, maybe I'm making a call or two. Gonna get into silly season again today. Anyways, yeah, and then first top 10 ever for good old Stingray Rob. So shout out to friend of the podcast, Stingray Rob.
I think I sent it to you, but did you see
Him doing
the
the
post
worm.
that I sent of him doing the worm?
Yes, that is. I will go back and post that on the story because, like, I don't think
It's
I've ever seen anything more perfect. But I'm like, oh, that's Stingray. It's complete sense, and I love it.
It is Stingray. And then the other thing that I want to say about that has absolutely nothing to do with the information that's there, but the notes, you put Sting Bob. It's
Sting Bob.
Sting Bob. I'm like, yeah, I love it. So does that conclude our time, our race recap?
Talk about Portland real quick in the notes that I took. Let's see. Portland, 110 laps. It's our final non-oval of the year, which is oval racing has honestly grown on me a lot more than I ever would have thought. I don't like oval qualifying. Portland's a road course, and I do think, like, for me, it probably goes road, oval, street courses.
Yeah.
So
100%. I love road courses. They are my absolute favorite. I think they're so much fun. So I'm really sad that this is our last non-oval for the year, but alas, what can you do?
4 races left.
4 races.
But yeah, Portland 12 turn circuit, almost 2 miles, relatively flat. I would assume it's probably been repaved. Can't verify if that's true or not, but I just feel like based off this year, it probably has been.
This is the year of the repaves for some reason.
Hello won in 23 and 21 with Scott McLaughlin taking the one in between for whatever that's worth. Predictions. So let's talk about how your podium from last week, all 3 of them did not finish the race.
Yeah, why you gotta do that to me? I thought the curse was from you, not me.
Unfortunately, I called it because I said Joseph Newgarden was going to have a comeback.
I'm gonna say, I mean, like the usual. I feel like I can't not say it, but Pato, Rossi, and Kyle. However, I also think Colton is going to be up there. He's really been pushing the 26, which is always fun to watch. Polo as well. I mean, he does really well on road courses, and you can never count him out. You really can't. I mean, he's still the championship leader, which is crazy to say, by the way, considering all of the race winners that we've had. Absolutely nuts. I digress. So, yeah, I think Colton and Polo are going to be ones to watch. I think they're probably going to put it up there too. I really want like a surprise, like podium finisher. I just want to have a random podium finisher. I'm like, show me VK or something like that. I don't know.
Honestly, you know who I think could be a surprise high finish? Nolan. I don't know if it'll be a podium, but like he finished 9th I believe,
Yeah.
this weekend. So, like, I think it's starting to kind of put it together and really kind of figure out that car. I don't really know what he's like on street courses. I don't know what his experience is here, but like, I think there's could be a chance if you're talking about like, oh, someone could kind of surprise us. It could be Nolan Siegel.
Yeah.
I think for me, kind of podium wise, or who like I'm figuring, Scotty Mack. I mean, he has been insane on all of our road courses all year. And I
Yeah.
don't think that's going to change. I'd like to see Colton up there. I'd like to see Kyle up there. I don't know. I don't feel like the Andretti like cars have done really well on road courses this year. I don't think they've done bad, but not really like wonderful. At least they're like they've done well on street courses, but not necessarily road courses. I think we're going to see Scott Dixon just because I don't think feels like we haven't talked about Scott Dixon in a while. And talk about Scott Dixon, he's going to pop up behind you.
Very true. Yeah, I think Dixon's probably a good person to put up there.
And then David Malukas. I think you got to put David in if you looked at how his last two have gone. Of like, dude has the pace
Yeah.
and like is driving so well that I'm like, you gotta. I think it's stupid not to bet on him.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, we've seen those flashes, and it really just is unfortunate that certain things are not turning out in his favor when it comes to his races. Because, like you said, he's got the pace, he's fast. And I think coming back, he's really kind of starting to put it together this year, which is a little sad that we've only got 4 races left and he's just starting to put it back together. But I think that's a really good indicator for the last 4 races, but also like next year too.
100%.
So, yeah.
Do we have our boy Hunter back? Is he in Portland? Or are we done with Hunter McElroy for the year?
I don't know, but I miss him.
I do too. Hunter, do you want to come on the podcast? I'm sure you're not listening, but like if you've listened this far, Hunter, you have an open invitation anytime you want it.
All right, so that wraps up our Portland stuff. Do you have the championship standings?
I do. I have those pulled up. So tie for 10th place right now with Santino Ferrucci and Felix Rosenquist, both at 249 points. Alexander Rossi is in 9th. Joseph Newgarden is in 8th. Kyle Kirkwood is in 7th. Pato Award is in 6th. Scott McLaughlin is in 5th. And I would say most likely that's probably the cutoff point of like championship contenders for the year, unless like Scotty Mack were to win the last 4. I think that's probably safely like from that 5th spot below. And then you have Willpower is 66 points back from the lead in 4th. Scott Dixon is 65 points back in 3rd. Colton Herta is now in 2nd, which is exciting because that's been a big shakeup for him and continuously kind of growing in the last like 3-4 races. So Colton is in 2nd, 59 points back, and then it has not changed because while he really has not had races to write home about the last few ones, other than his big shunt in Iowa, like Alex Blow has just been doing what he needs to do. It hasn't been anything spectacular. It hasn't even really been podiums. It's just been he's done his job.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's so consistent with finishing in points that the amount of wins that he's had is like, it doesn't matter. You compare this season to last season. Like last season, he was very dominant. Like he was basically the Max Verstappen last year. Like it was nuts. And then it's just been kind of like, yeah, he's like you said, he's doing what he needs to do. And it's so funny to me that he's still the championship leader when he hasn't been winning the same way that he was last year. Like math is so fascinating like that.
And I think that's going to really honestly make these last, not make, maybe take Portland out of the equation, but it's going to make these last 3 oval races, I think, potentially very interesting because we know that, like, historically, it is statistical fact that Alex Blow has never won on an oval. So it's like, okay, well, he doesn't get these wins and potentially doesn't get podiums if he's finishing. I mean, if he's finishing in the top 10, it's going to be interesting if we're seeing Willpower, Colton, if Colton can get his first oval win because he hasn't had one either. He hasn't even had a podium ever on an oval.
Yeah, no, it's going to be so interesting. I really think that between Pelot and Herta, whoever gets the oval win is really going to be the championship contender here.
Don't count out Scott Dixon.
They can't count out Scott Dixon. Can't count out Power either, I guess. So I guess that wraps us up for the week. Yeah?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Well, it is 8:37. We are both brain dead. and fried. So I don't know about you, Megan, but I fully plan on taking a shower and going to bed like immediately after this.
I get to teach my first day ever as a professor at 8 a.m. So yeah, that's 100% the plan.
Fantastic. I get to test out robots tomorrow, and I don't know how well it's gonna go.
That sounds more fun than reading a syllabi.
It's only gonna be fun if it works. If it doesn't, I'm screwed. So,
Alright.
wish us luck, Pod. We will be back after Portland.
Alright, y'all. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.